And we begin with this. If Governor Tim Walz thinks his ballooning Minnesota fraud scandal is going away anytime soon, yeah, he better think again. We are on the case here in the Roundup studios. Federal authorities now saying that the scope of the growing crisis goes way beyond what was previously imagined, and that when all is said and done, the cost for the fraud damage could eventually cost taxpayers more than $9 billion. The U.S. attorney in charge of prosecuting those fraud schemes now says that the magnitude of the crimes cannot be overstated and that what's going on is taking place at an industrial scale. He says so far, fraud has been discovered in more than a dozen different programs, that the total cost of all those programs combined, get this, tops $18 billion, and he believes that at the end of the day, more than half of those payments, they may be fraudulent. Goes on to say that during their investigations, officials are now discovering that many companies aren't merely overbilling Medicaid, they're basically providing no services at all. Says fraudsters are basically creating fake shell companies, submitting false claims, and then spending the free cash on international travel and jet-set lifestyles. Additionally, he claims that Minnesota has now become such a magnet for grift that it's actually developed its own fraud tourism industry with people pouring into the state from all over the country, all in order to take part in the schemes and get their hands on all that easy money. Officials say they're just getting started when it comes to investigating and holding people accountable for the scams. They say federal agents, including the FBI, currently in the process of executing a number of new search warrants and looking into a variety of different state programs and home health organizations. They also say that every day they look under a rock, they find new $50 million fraud schemes. In the meantime, authorities, they keep charging a bunch of new defendants in their alleged roles for the fraud. And right now, there are so many different types of scams, they're even giving them their own names. Among them, the autism fraud scheme, the housing services fraud scheme, the assisted living fraud scheme, and you kind of get the point. Just goes on and on. And since we're not hearing much these days from Governor Tim Walz, maybe he'd like to chip in and name a few of them for himself. In fact, right now, here's the hotline. 2 people in the world have the number to this hotline, 47. President Donald J. Trump and Governor Walz. He has the hotline number as well. Governor Walz, you've got a free form right here. Check in anytime. We'll get you on the air. No questions asked. Speak your mind, state your case. And speaking of the governor, for his part, Walz has already temporarily suspended a number of those questionable Medicaid programs. And he says that moving forward, fraud will not be tolerated in his state at all. Go get him, Tiger. He also says he plans to continue working diligently alongside his federal partners in order to catch all the bad guys, hold them accountable for their crimes, and finally bring out-of-control fraud in Minnesota to an end. He's on top of his game. Final thought, and this is the News Roundup Lowdown. In everything we do in life, there is in place a system of checks and balances. If a traffic cop pulls you over, he or she has a body cam to record the event and all interactions. And that way, everyone is held accountable. Also, at my bank, there are more cameras in that one-story building than you'll find at any movie studio anywhere on the planet. Nobody gets away with anything. In Minnesota, however, it's beginning to feel like everybody is left to their own devices to work on their own and do whatever they want with absolutely no oversight. There's no cameras allowed in Minnesota. Hey, look, at the end of the day, somebody's got to be the grown-up in the room and say the buck stops here. And that someone is the state's chief executive officer. In other words, the governor. Now, because I'm kind of new to politics, I'm going to have to phone a friend to find out who the governor is. Hey, Producer Davey, a little help. Who's that CEO governor guy in charge in Minnesota? What's his name?
Are you talking about Governor Tim Walz, Bill?
That's the one, Tim Walz. So here's the deal. Somebody dropped the ball. A number of folks made bank. Others got caught and are behind bars. And taxpayers, they're left footing the bill. Now, look, it's Friday, so we have to end this story on a bit of a happy note. You'll be delighted to hear that the guy charged with overseeing the state of Minnesota, Tim Walz, he is living right now in a mansion, rent-free, with a 6-figure salary and tons of perks. I just adore happy news. And now this brief news roundup advertisement. Producer Davis, our first advertisement. When visiting Minnesota, please visit Walsneyland and take a ride on the roller coaster of fraud, daredevil deception, and the now world-famous I Know Nothing merry-go-round. It just goes round and round and round, and nobody ever has any answers. Nobody knows what's going on. Producer Davey, that's it. The commercial is over. And any thoughts on Minnesota mayhem? What's on your mind?
Yeah, Bill. Well, unfortunately, I don't think these types of scams are limited just to Minnesota.
Yeah.
You know, they're probably taking place all over the country, but apparently it's so easy to get away with in Minnesota that people are flocking there just for the opportunity.
Yeah, that is the place. Folks have been checking in as well, leaving comments for us right here, saying there's a lot of this happening in Ohio, also in Maine, Oregon, and pretty much all over the country. We need to watch things very carefully. And the way I see it, all Minnesotans right now, they should kind of band together, start maybe one of those big, giant, goofy petitions, and demand new state leadership on account of right now, you may not know it, but you're getting gypped. And on that note, if you haven't already done so, please hit that subscribe button right over there. And you're always welcome as well to leave your thoughts and your comments. Always love to hear from you and scooting right along.